Good morning. East Skakip Atanaquail, Tani Ata Kawatsan Tamach. Acknowledging that we're on Cowichan traditional territory. This is a transit committee for Wednesday, April 11th, 2018. I'm Kerry Davis. Just got a few guests to introduce from BC Transit, Myrna Moore and Tyson Loreth. From First Canada, Colin Oakes. From Oak Transit, Bruce Pazowski. And Cowichan Community Services, Carol Blatchford. Also, Rochelle Rondeau from Land Use Services. Mr. Wakeham, any new items or changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have a new business item for your consideration. It is review of transit routes 8 and 9. If the committee wishes to add that. And just a quick reminder that the staff, yesterday we notified you that there was an added item to the closed session agenda as well.
So, motion to accept the agenda as amended, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Adoption of the minutes from the regular transit meeting of February 14th. Moved, seconded. Any discussion, changes? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carried. All right. No business arising from the minutes. Public input period. Any member of the public wishing to speak on an agenda topic, and the policy and procedures are up on the big screen. Going once, going twice. All right. No delegations, correspondence, or information reports. R1, Mr. Wakeham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our first report is actually a presentation by a BC Transit representative who we've been working with for the last number of months on this project. And just before Tyson gets started here, I actually just wanted to give thanks to him or Myrna, and particularly Tyson, and as well as I see Rochelle in the audience here as well, helping with the many hours that these folks have put in on this project so far. Lots of meetings on the site, lots of dealing with the CVRD land use planning staff with the information package that's been submitted for the development permit application. We were here late last night going through a similar presentation for Area E APC Commission, which I believe went quite well. I also see the chair of that commission in our audience. Hello, Susan. So I know Tyson's not feeling well. He sure wasn't last night, but I'm glad you arrived, and hopefully you're okay to get through the session. And if you can show us your presentation, please.
Yeah, no problem.
Is the microphone up there?
Ooh, I don't know.
Yeah, thank you so much. Oh, microphone.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you all for having me today. Yeah, we were up here late last night till about 9:15 and made the drive back. It felt like I did. Again, I appreciate I've been working for the future, and when it's appropriate, we'll be looking to implement that fuel infrastructure and slowly move over the fleet as appropriate. Obviously, along with the design objectives, we had outside storage area, and then the appropriate site upgrades, so the servicing, utilities, landscape planning, landscaping, paving, security, and anything else that goes along with a facility built in 2018 for BC Transit. So the main reason I'm here today is we submitted a development permit application to the CVRD back in January. We were actually going through a value engineering analysis at that time. We went through with our consultants, quantity surveyor, and went and got some support. The original DP package included 4 maintenance bays, a 2-story admin and ops building. So that's the admin and operations side would be 2 stories. Standalone fuel island, automated bus wash and building, the full build out of the transit yard to accommodate 50 buses, and full equipment build out of all 4 bays. When we got that back from our quantity surveyor a couple weeks after submitting our development permit, the cost came in just north of $16 million is what they had estimated it at. And many of you know that the budget that we have for this project is $13 million. So I had some sticker shock, took that back internally, and worked with our designers, our staff internally, so our maintenance staff and the fleet guys that we have at BC Transit. We looked at options on what we could remove out of that original development scope, but still get the CVRD, or the Cowichan Valley Regional District, a facility that would accommodate the buses they have now, the buses that they're looking to in the future, as well as get all of the necessary assets or infrastructure you would need to have a new facility. So taking that into account and seeing that we had to reduce to just over $3 million in scope, we removed one of the maintenance bays. Right now, the new revised development permit that we submitted back in February to the planning department has 3 maintenance bays. The geographical footprint for the 4th maintenance bay is there if and when needed. The reason we did that is BC Transit uses a model of about 16 to 1, so 16 buses for every 1 maintenance bay. The Cowichan Valley has about 33 buses in their fleet of mix between Lake Cowichan, Handy Dart, and the commuter and then conventional service. So we looked at that. If you take 16 times 3, you're more than adequate at 3 maintenance bays. The 4th maintenance bay, yes, it would be nice. It's a nice to have, but it's not a need right now. We looked at removing 1 story of the admin and ops side. So when we had first originally put in the first development permit, the 2nd floor was just to be built out. There was nothing up there. We recognized that we wanted to leverage all the federal and provincial money we had now on the table. So technically that was future space to be used as see fit now, with when the buses get to about, when the fleet gets to about 50 buses, we recognize that there might need to be a 2nd floor for administration, bus drivers, appropriate technology, so IT storage and all those things. So we recognize that, again, that was a want, not a need. So the 1 floor that we've proposed has enough space to accommodate all the administration staff we see fit that would potentially use the facility, appropriate storage, appropriate driver's facility, so a lounge for them and their lockers, washrooms, everything. We haven't jeopardized anything for a fleet up to 42 buses. And again, it's a discrepancy. It's kind of, you can look at it yourself and say, yeah, you could probably use a little bit more space, so that office could be a little bit bigger, but taking into account what we do at other facilities, we feel like the 1 story will be adequate. The biggest ticket item that really came along with the first EP was an automated bus wash and a standalone building. The quote that came at about $1.2 million. And so we went back and we decided, after taking into account what cost to do a bus and the maintenance on an automated system, that we could design and incorporate into our fuel island a fuel island and a bus wash area. And I've gone out and found a very reputable manufacturer that we actually have at one of our other sites in BC Transit with a manual bus wash system. So it's similar to, it's like a big cart, and it's got an arm that goes up onto it, and it's got bristles inside, and you walk that around the bus on a track system. Lots of people actually in Victoria use it, so we have Wilson's Transportation. I've seen it working there, and we have it at one of our other facilities. And we've recognized that a system like that is about $30,000, and then the building is about $125,000 to $150,000. So $1.2 to $175,000 is a huge cost savings to us. We do recognize that there is room for an automated bus wash if and when needed on the property, so we're not jeopardizing ourselves on the geographic location. But we feel like at a fleet of 32 with the transit future plan over the next 25 years, an automated bus wash, again, it was a want, not a need. And we recognize that a manual bus wash system and a proper area to do that washing will be just as important, and will get the fleet to where we want it to look nice for everyone to see. So that's important. And then obviously combining the fuel island and the bus wash was a cost savings around the construction aspect. And then we looked at the yard, and there's another slide coming up that will show you a little bit better, but we've decided to reduce the pavement of the yard by about 16%. Now, again, That can be paved if and when needed down the line, but what we're doing right now is paving for the room to accommodate 42 buses. So we recognize that you guys will have room to add 8 to 10 new buses to the fleet before you really need that extra pavement area. There's an opportunity. It will be graded and paved. I know Jim has been eyeing up that opportunity potentially for a CCAN he has somewhere else. And so there's opportunities for the CVRD to use that space as see fit. Obviously, it won't be ready to park buses on, but for storage of CCANs and other assets that might need a secure place, we can use that there. So, and then we reduced, obviously with the reduce of 4 bays, we're only going to be outfitting the 3 bays. So there's a cost savings there. So altogether with the removal of a maintenance bay, that second story admin, combining the fuel island and the bus wash area, using a manual bus wash and the yard, we were able to bring the project back into the $13 million area with the proper contingency going into construction. So I did want to let everybody know that I'm not 13 million all in. I've got my contingency that my boss and my project director feel like is comfortable with the geotechnical we've done, the environmental, and taking into account the construction. What would it be? The construction volatility right now, as we know, construction prices are sliding every which way, week to week, month to month. So that's where we started and where we've ended up now. The next slide will give you guys a little bit of a better idea. I think I have a laser pointer here. So, yeah, oh, maybe that won't work on those TVs. No, okay, that's okay. So as you can tell right here, on the left, you've got our original development permit. So 4 maintenance bays, standalone fuel island, automated bus wash in the south. And then on the right, you'll see we now have 3 maintenance bays. It's hard to see the 1-story admin, but the black square on the left is trying to show you that 1-story admin. We've combined the fuel island and the bus wash into one kind of area, which is also really good for the environmental side. So we're going to be able to pour and have a concrete pad with the proper catch basin and the proper environmental parameters put in. So if there is an issue in that area, which obviously we wouldn't want to happen, but again, stuff happens, we'll be able to isolate that area, shut it off, and properly take on anything there. And then obviously the grayed out area on the right is where our future CNG area is, as well as the future pavement. So those are the kind of the 2 changes we've seen. And again, we recognize that we're getting a facility, or we're going to build a facility in the area that has the proper fuel, the proper washing stations, administration, maintenance, and as well as parking and security for our fleet up here. So this slide is a rendering that went in with the development permit. This is a rendering of the actual building that we'll look to build here. The top left northwest corner. So if you're not familiar with the location, that's if you're at the end of Bull Road, which is kind of a private cul-de-sac. That's you looking back towards the Polkey Road up on the top. The top right is actually if you're standing on Polkey looking down Bull Road to kind of give you that frontage orientation. And then the bottom ones, the southwest and southeast, are the back side of the building, which again, people won't mostly see because of the building orientation and the landscape plan we're looking to implement. There'll be some sight lines, but most of it will be out of sight. So that's what's been submitted to the development permit, the revised, and so far we've had really positive feedback on the design piece. So upcoming, we've got some critical dates here that we're going to be working closely with the CVRD on, as well as some other people to get us prepared to potentially start construction. So last night, I think Jim mentioned we met with the APC Area E to go over our development permit and working with them closely. Obviously, I'm here today to meet with you guys on April 11th. We're shooting for May 2nd to take or I guess it would be Rochelle's group and the planning department of the CVRD to work the development permit up through the proper process to the EASC meeting, which I believe we're still to be confirmed, but May 2nd. And then potentially May 30th or June 6th to the CVRD board for development permit approval. As well as we do have one variance, which is the frontage variance. I think my boss, Levi Timmermans, and I were here in May last year, and we had discussed that that was the one variance we'll be looking for. At the time, we actually had a height variance, but we found a way around that, so it's just the frontage variance. Jim and I are working closely on our agreement between BC Transit and the CVRD on the project, so we're getting close on that. And then I'm right into it with our first major tender package, which is site prep, site servicing, and foundational work on the site to be awarded for sometime in June. Obviously, we need our development permit and our building permits for that to happen, and some other things to happen, but that's what I'm striving for. And then, to be honest, we're going to hit the ground running in June, and there'll be lots of activity if that's the case, and we'll push right through until targeted completion, which is May 30th, 2019, which is also tied around the federal and the provincial money around the PTIF agreement that we have for this project. So that's kind of that's what I had to show you today. Again, I'm going to be working closely with Jim to keep everybody up to speed. We've got some big things going to happen here in the next couple months, and I think everybody will be pleased if and when it comes to see the activity on the site. And obviously, anything that kind of comes with a project of this nature, I've taken away something that kind of hit me personally when I met with the APC group on the site last week, and they looked at us and they said we're an anchor tenant in the industrial park, and I've taken that home.
These were just targeted dates. They weren't. They're not etched in stone, and it's really gonna depend on where it goes from the APC meeting we had last night. If there's more meetings on that, and how that rolls out with the land use planning. So these were just targeted dates, and if the dates are a typo, then I'll take that responsibility.
Okay.
It was really to say it's going to be in the first week or two of June, really.
Okay, thank you.
I think May
And then-
30th is probably the deadline for the June 6th Electoral Area Services Committee agenda.
Okay. And so I had two questions. One was about the contingency fund. So if it proves that it's not as much, that it's going to cost more than you have in contingency, is the cost sharing the same as the primary cost between the CVRD and BC Transit?
So we recognize that $13 million is the project budget. If for some apparent reason, unknown, costs start to go outside of that, we have ideas to scale back further on the project, and that's part of our risk strategy. As well as the other way that if the costs come in under, because we do want to leverage all the money we have, we'll be looking at either paving out the rest of the yard or adding a fourth bay, depending on how much cost is there. So we have protected ourselves. We think we've got a proper contingency, but we also recognize that they can go either way. So if it goes above, we've got some ideas, maybe paving less of the yard, having gravel. We've got some ideas there that we can look at. But again, on the flip side, which I would love to say that we'll be able to give you a bit more than I'm promising, but again, we're kind of, we think we're in a good spot right now, and because we're getting close to the construction side, we think our quantity or surveys are pretty accurate. Obviously,
Okay.
anything's unknown, but yeah.
Okay. And the other question I had was around the, what did you call it? It's no longer going to be automated, manual bus washing. Does that affect the staffing required at the facility?
It actually doesn't, because what we found is that you would need a person to clean the inside of the bus. So a person would come in to the wash area. They're going to have a vacuum power washer there, all the appropriate tools to do the inside of the bus. And what would happen then in a normal circumstance is, if we had a full automated system, he would get on the bus, drive out of that area, go over to the automated bus, open the doors, go in, close, wash, wheel out. He's going to be able to get out of the bus, jump on the machine right there, and go around. So we actually don't think it's that much of a time difference, because the automated bus wash still takes time to do it.
Right.
So we don't
Requires
think,
the staff.
yeah, we don't see that being a huge operational concern around those costs. If anything, it's really keeping everything in one spot. maybe guys aren't having to walk across the site to get buses. It's kind of bringing everything a bit more efficient into one spot, which,
So it'll be kind of a wash?
yeah,
in terms
at
of
the end of the
staffing.
day, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks
A
very much. I
wash.
didn't mean to be.
Your
like
pun
a
was
kind-
not
That was
intended.
pretty unconsciously clever, wasn't it?
That was very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Yanni Denardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. And I'm sure that the APC last night asked these questions. Mine is about being on the floodplain and all the environmental aspects of it, so the stormwater runoff, the catchment and the maintenance, and you've covered that because you had said that that was a big issue. And the other one was, can you expand, you have the base, and then when you're obviously going to be needing more space very quickly. Is it going to be built so that you can expand walls, build on top? You mentioned that there's an office. Is it easy to do at a lower cost, you know, sort of like a puzzle, so that they're able to piece these on with a lower price tag?
Tyson?
So, yeah, I'll go back to this slide. Those are all really good points. So, we are building the first floor to accommodate a second floor, so structurally,
Yeah.
it will all be ready to go. In a perfect world, you would just take the Lego piece and put it on top there. So that's really good. As you can see on the right-hand slide, there's actually a little jet out, which up here, sorry about that. Up here, this is this piece right here, which is actually in the footprint of the fourth facility, is what we call our oil and lube room. So that holds all the oil, all the lubes, and everything that the mechanics need. We've actually, we were going to put a cinder block building there, but we've actually gone away and we're designing a C-can so that when we are ready to put the fourth bay on, all we come is pick up the C-can, move it 20 feet and put it down. So we actually don't have to demolish a building or anything. And then all they do is just plug it into the fourth bay and just run the lines through. So we are prepared, and we do believe that the time will come when you need that fourth bay and that second floor, and paving out the parking lot. So they're all designed for really quick and hopefully cost-efficient construction.
Great, so speaking of being plugged in, is there any, I didn't notice it, the electric car plugs, they'll be automatically put in this building for staff, for example, and we know that it is coming. Will you have that? And the two things we had talked about in a last processing plant, it happens to be in Cowichan Bay, was the electric car plugs and also bicycle stands.
Yeah, so we have designated bike stands up near the public parking up in the top left corner. So there is a spot. I don't believe we have more. I think it's about 8 bikes can be stored there. And if there was a need for an extra one, there's space there. The electric car charging spot, I've actually taken that back internally at BC Transit. Because this facility isn't going to see a lot of public use. We're not planning on selling tickets there. It's a private facility at the end of the day.
I'm thinking staff as well.
We aren't planning on putting one in. That doesn't mean that the infrastructure is there to do it. At all our other facilities in the province, we don't have any. So I've asked that question internally, and we don't do that right now. Obviously, if that's something that's important to the CVRD and for staff, it's something that definitely can be looked at, but it's not part of our design now.
Yeah, it is something that we should be looking at in the future while you're already underway with the building, or at least have the wires in the right? Do it instead of digging up the infrastructure and putting something in, have it so that, like you're doing with the second floors and the stories, also have it available if needed, and then it's not a huge cost.
Yeah, so the benefit is we have the electrical power, we have the capacity to put one in, and at the end of the day, we would probably put one in where the public would park, and maybe there would be one staff parking spot for that, as well as we can hook up off any of the infrastructure in the yard. So again, it would just be bringing in the plug at the end of the day, but all the infrastructure and everything is designed in to accommodate that, so no problem.
Thank you. Director Morrison.
I've got a few questions. Do you have somebody behind me?
Nope.
Excellent. Tyson, I love that phrase, under promise and over deliver. I hope that works here. First question, On capacity, you were mentioning the 50 quantity number for buses. Is that based on like a full-size maximum capacity bus, or is that a combination of like how our fleet looks now?
So yeah, that is something that's important to look at, is that the Cowichan Valley Regional District has a very unique fleet. You guys do really well with a lot of different buses in a lot of different spots. So we are looking at 50 buses for fully conventional service. So I don't know the ratio, but in my head, I think of a Handy-Dart bus being kind of 2 to 1 of a conventional. It's not that, but it's pretty close. So yeah, that's 50 conventional buses. So anything like your, I'm not sure if you have Novas or Arbocs or the Commuter, which is a bit smaller, compact bus. You'll be able to fit more than 50 with that different design, I guess, of the different buses.
So thank you. That actually gives us a little bit of wiggle room based on our fleet now. So that's good to know. Second question around the fuel island bus wash combo. You'd already mentioned that, you know, the environmental safeguards and the likes. Do you anticipate it being separated, like closed loop systems for each, like the water will never mix with the oil, so to speak? It may be too much in the way of a design question asked, but I think that's important that we have that certainty when you're going to combine those two. You know, it's wash is water and fueling is and we don't want to have any accidents. So, any thoughts on that?
So right now, and was something that I presented last night, is we are planning one line coming off the fuel island in the bus wash area. It'll have proper oil water separators to capture any debris, and then that will go north towards the maintenance building and connect with the drains in the maintenance building, and then out to the proper sanitary sewer. But the checks are in there to make sure that we capture anything. It's also something that was looked at last night, is that I think Rochelle has to go and talk to North Cowichan about the quantity that we would be putting into the system, because it's a bus wash at the end of the day. Yep. So it's something I'm going to work closely with her to answer for the electoral people last night.
Great. Getting to the last point here, and I'll go to staff with the last question. I was just looking at the calendar, and if we're early May to EASC, I think there's a couple of opportunities in that month for if we're smoothly through electoral area services and there's not a lot of changes, that we should be able to, I would hope, get it to the board fairly quickly. So I'm sure they're checking their calendars as we speak. But my last point is, you've got the Busy Place Creek and the likes, and I know that your staff know that that's a very important area. It's a historical transit way, and there's been a lot of school kids work in there. We've got stream keepers. Will we have an opportunity to see a little bit more detail? I think we've seen some rough ideas about what would be done in there as far as those, but I'd like to see, a little detail on if there's going to be any enhancement features and what kind of resources you brought in on for ecological input on that important area.
So last night part of my presentation was our landscape plan and some of the enhancement ideas that we've come up with and presented to the planning department. Kathy O'Donnell, I believe, spoke last night. She's a stream restoration person. She worked with the kids at the elementary school. So she presented actually before me, which was great, and talked about what they had done in the area, where they had actually invested some money and where they'd seen salmon and those kind of things. So I'm going to work closely with Rochelle and make sure that the plants that we've actually picked in our landscape plan are appropriate. If they're not, we can look at substituting and making sure that we're enhancing the area the best we can. I think there's actually some room for a little bit of improvement from our end in terms of the plants we chose from our landscape design consultant. Kathy had some great ideas on some low-flowing bushes or something that can go across the water to keep it cooler in the summer and stuff like that. But I'm more than happy to work with Jim to try and get some more information to you on those enhancements and where we're seeing bang for your buck. So we're going to invest either up front on Bull Road in that one, or along Polkey in the main Busy Place Creek. There's also what we're calling Watercourse C at the back of the property. So we've looked at it, and obviously the budget thing is kind of top of our list, but where we want to spend the money and where we see our best bang for our buck at the end of the day. One of the things that did come out of our planning early on and working with the revisions is we've decided to capture all the rainwater off the maintenance and the main building into a tank, and we'll be able to use that if and when there's maybe drought restrictions, and be able to irrigate the front of the property with a type of system. So we recognize that there's some stuff we can do to make that better and help out the enhancement. At the end of the day, we would love to be able to do everything, but just because of the cost constraints and everything, we've decided this route. But again, we're working closely with the CVRD. But again, like I said, Jim and I can work on getting you guys something if you'd like that.
Thank you, and I think the reference to asking North Cowichan about capacity, was that for Joint Utilities Board sewer?
I think there was a concern that an influx of that. I've talked with Duncan. They didn't see any concern of us pulling or giving back, but I think there was just wanted to double check that I guess North Cowichan is the end user and manages that system. So I think Rochelle was going to work with them and touch base with them at the end of the day.
Okay, I've got Director Nicholson, then I'll go to Director Lefebvre.
I just want to thank Tyson very much for all his hard work with us on this. The Area EAPC really appreciated meeting last night, and yeah, it's really important for our community that the business park becomes a fish-friendly business park, and this project is clearly a model for how we'd like the area to develop and be restored. So thank you very much for your work.
I appreciate the kind words, and again, it's going very well in my mind, and the collaboration I think is important at the end of the day. So,
Thank you, Director Lefebvre.
Thank you. I assume, I wasn't at that meeting, so I assume the SPIA was accepted as reasonable. I like the new design because there's less development closer to the south edge of the property, and maybe there's an opportunity to have more environmentally friendly use of that land, at least until it's needed for other. Will that future development area be graded and gravelled and just made ready for future paving?
yeah, so they will be fenced in for security reasons, but it will be graded and prepared. Again, if you need storage for maybe a sea can in the back of the property or anything like that, it won't be accessible to the public, just for safety concerns and watching over our fleet and our maintenance area. But yeah.
But Director Nicholson, you're comfortable with the streamside protection there? Thank you.
All right, thank you. I guess nobody else has any comments. I have a couple. So right now we have 33 buses, and you wouldn't need a fourth bay until after we have more than 48, so another 15 buses. It wouldn't surprise me if we were into electric buses by that time, and you probably wouldn't need the fourth bay anyway because they require a lot less maintenance. But all right, I think that's it for this one. Thank you. That was for information. So on to R2, Mr. Wakeham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. R2, Route 44 Saturday Pilot Transit Service Update. The report's really to give you a 6-month update with lots of data. For the Saturday service, we started October 14th, 2017. So it's actually been in operation for 25 Saturdays. But the information in the report and the data sheets is for the 24 weeks that ended March 31. And again, I just want to thank Colin from First Canada and BC Transit for their data collection help, gathering all this information every single Saturday from what stop, what time, and actually giving it to us very quickly. Quite frankly, by the end of the day has been very good. Overall, the service, it's considering we started in the winter sort of poorer weather, if you will, the ridership has been doing well and the service itself is doing well. We have no no issues at all. There's been no trip cancellations or routing or capacity issues, mechanical issues. I'm touching wood as I say that, but there hasn't been any. On the second page of the report, there's a summation provided with lots of revenue and ridership data for your review. There's some interesting trends that we sort of found here, is that the revenue is doing better than we budgeted, which is great. The total ridership is also doing a little better than we thought. Again, for the winter is very good. Interesting to see the break of paid cash fares versus passes or free being the children. They're about 15%, which is a little bit higher than what we expected, but on the other hand, it's good to see that those individuals are using the service. With respect to the direction that passengers are going, the results showing there's a few more people traveling south than north, which is sort of where we kind of thought it would be. There's 54% of our passengers are traveling southbound to Victoria area, and 46 are traveling northbound, which indicate there's some people that are getting rides home or rides down or staying overnight or whatever they might be doing. With regard to the specific data, though, just quickly I'll go over attachment B, which is quite a bit of data, and this is provided for ridership by pickup and drop-off location. So we don't think there's really any surprises, with that being the busiest stops depending on the travel direction. But if you're looking at Village Green Mall, Valley View, Duncan Train Station, and Frayne are obviously the busier stops, just kind of what we expected. And on attachment C, it's virtually the same type of information, but it's now provided on the trip times that are offered. And again, not really too surprising. The first trip southbound at 9:17 is by far the busiest. And the last trip northbound leaving at 5:11 is obviously quite busy. But it's good to see that the other four stops, or trips, pardon me, there's no one or two stops that are significantly less or doing very weakly, if you will. They're all pretty consistent, which is actually very good. So that was really the intent of the report, is just to give you lots of data information. From staff's perspective, we're quite happy with it. We're looking to see what the trends will be over the spring and summer months. And staff will be bringing back an update, likely at budget time, which would be right around September-ish, to give you pretty much a full year snapshot. And then we have to make a decision whether we carry on with this service or make an adjustment. Staff would also suggest we don't want to make any changes to the stop locations or the service times we're offering. We've actually gotten a fair amount of compliments, which is nice. So that's really the purpose of the report. I open to any questions somebody might have.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Just wondering what the capacity of those buses, because I see there's one trip that had 39 people on it.
I'm actually going to ask Colin to help me, because I'm always never sure, because we have some standees as well. So the seats on the commuters, Colin, 34?
41 seated, 14 standing.
Thank you.
41 seated, 14 standing. Okay, so
So far on a Saturday, we have
unless there's some big event that a whole bunch of people want to go to, we're still looking good. Director Marsh? Okay. All right, thank you.
May I add one more comment, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Wickham? Yeah.
One other comment that we thought when we started this was, what if we get more than the bus holds? What are we going to do with that? We haven't had that problem yet, but we do have a bit of a backup plan, and it's really going to be at the call of Colin if he needs to send another bus. So if we realize that there's more people that are heading down than what the buses are going to hold coming back, what are we going to do? So it's going to have to be a call at his discretion in the mid-afternoon to decide. But we think that, you know, even the standees, on the regular commuter, there's many days where there's 12 or 15 in the busier days holding on, and it's not the best, but they do get back. So just wanted to let you know there is a bit of a plan B if need be, that's all.
So since we know that the busiest trips are the first one from Duncan in the morning and the last one back from Victoria in the afternoon, would the second bus just stay down there all day and then come back at the end?
Colin, I'll let
Likely,
you
but-
speak to that if you wouldn't mind, if you could maybe just come up. I don't think that would be more the case, and part of it is, there's a schedule for the drivers as well. It gets a little
Yeah.
bit complicated in here to try and stay away from overtime and whatnot, but can you maybe answer that question, Colin?
Guess we're getting a bit out of where we should be, but
Yeah, so we have the driver going down in the morning, radio our dispatch and let them know. If we get concerns, they'll phone me. We'll bring in another driver from home and send a second bus. So at this end, it would be 20 minutes. The way we count the passengers, so by the time they're leaving Millstream coming back to the Cowichan Valley, by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I basically know if we're gonna need another bus in Victoria. for the afternoon trip home. And we would just send it down empty if we had to. Yeah. But so far, we haven't had that, so.
Thank you.
We're hoping we do eventually.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, any other questions, comments? Mr. Wakeham, R3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. R3 is also, just for information, rather unique summer. We have a milestone for transit service in the valley as we have some fairly long-term anniversary dates for our service. The conventional service will be 25 years old in mid-August, and the commuter will pass its 10-year anniversary in October. So staff looked at that, and I know this BC Transit sort of tracks this and gives us a little bit of a little poke to say, hey, are you going to do some customer appreciation day like a lot of other regions? So we quickly looked at it and said, yeah, we're in support of that idea. We would suggest to you that we wouldn't recommend a cash-free day in recognition of that, mainly this year because we have so many other ones that are affecting our budget with a unique year with BC Summer Games and the election. So staff are just going to put together a bit of a meet and greet and sort of a tent and pastries and coffees. The recommendation would be to do it at London Drugs or close to London Drugs it is the hub of our stop more so than the train station. The other advantage of that is that's where the commuters start as well and finish. So we recognize Ladysmith is a little bit further away and Lake Cowichan is too, but we just can't hold these meet and greets, if you will, or appreciation events in all the communities. So we were sort of targeting between 5 and 6:30. Most of the commuters do come into the Duncan area. And as they're getting off and connecting, or regular local residents connecting, that's where we would suggest. I know Aaron's been in contact with the Village Green Mall landlord to ensure they're okay with it. We haven't heard any reason why we wouldn't be. The one area we're thinking that we might need to hold a separate one, though, would be out in Lake Cowichan because they don't connect at that time. So we thought we're going to think about that, and we might suggest to the area directors out there that, and we have to work with the operating company out there, does it make sense to do a separate one for them somewhere in that same time frame? So we can't be in two spots at once. But the real intent was to just get your sort of approval in principle and feedback if you have any. In regarding the timeline, we're trying to target, I think the report talks somewhere between September 17 and the week of the 17th and the 24th is what we were targeting, probably midweek type event. That's it. It really is just for an update for your thought.
Director Yana DiNardo?
Sounds good. Do we need a resolution or just in principle? I think it's a good idea to offer a celebration and.
That'd be great. We'll come back and give you the details, the time and where we're at, and we'll do that. Probably come back to you in June at the next meeting or so. But as long as you didn't see any major issues with it, that's all.
Director Morrison?
Yeah, thanks. And I think that I'd like to see something in the Lake Cowichan area. Just I think it's something to celebrate, and also kids are just getting back into school and the likes. I think there's some opportunities to market our product there. So if you could bring back options for that, that'd be great.
Sure, and if I may just add a comment, what's also good with this is we are adding additional service come July 1. So I know it's a little bit far out, it's 3 months after that, but every opportunity we can try and meet with the public and give them an update on what the changes are. There's also fare changes, as we know, July 1, but it's a good opportunity to talk to them. So yeah, we'll definitely consider that.
Thank you. The only thing I could see that might be potentially problematic is it may conflict with UBCM, but I think it's the week before that this year. So.
Maybe just ask Aaron to speak to that. I think Aaron was communicating on that. I think we're okay with our dates, but.
Yeah, we've checked that out. UBCM is the week ahead, so we're proposing either the 17th or the 24th to steer clear of that.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right. No unfinished business. Oh, new business. Mr. Wakeham.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we have a new business item here that it's really, I guess the topic is to review transit routes 8 and 9, and what I thought maybe I could ask Director Clement to introduce sort of the item, and I can speak to where the status is, and that might be best if he wouldn't mind.
As we
Director
do from
Clement?
time to time, we move routes to see if they're going to be more efficient or effective for the community. And I've had some very vocal people upon the first changes that happened, and I had to emphasize to them that these things take time. And so that time has passed, and so I guess I was curious to know where a review process would occur on the 8 and 9. And so that's the short of it. We're at that 3-year mark.
Mr. Chair, can I respond to that?
Yes, so there was some discussion about it in the last meeting, but there's a little bit more. This 2 South End routes.
Right, so what I can tell you here is staff recognize, and so does BC Transit, we know there's gaps in weekday service. We know that change, it made some benefits, but it also added some challenges in. We're trying to just make sure that we find out where the main travel destinations are. What are the patterns? And because I call it the triangle of Shawnigan Lake and Mill Bay, and of course up the center for the most part, how do we make decisions with not exactly knowing where people are going? So the other part is on the July 1 expansion of the 1,500 hours, it does not include the south end, and that's mainly because 1,500 hours doesn't go a long ways. And once we go over that 1,500 hours, we need another bus. So it adds to a financial aspect. So that being said, we didn't just say forget about it. We've signed an MOU with BC Transit to initiate a review of the south end, so that's already taken place. Matter of fact, they've already started the data collection. It started a couple weeks ago in March. But it really won't get going until the fall, and that's partially because of a capacity issue with BC Transit helping us. So the idea is to do data collections, ride checks, find out where people are going, and that's September to December range. Do some public engagement again in January, April of next year, and ultimately the discussion would come back in June. I know it seems like a long time, but to do these things right, I've learned from BC Transit that you can't just make a change because there's some people thinking this bus should go down this route and not here, because it's going to affect somebody else. So I wished we could have got it earlier, but that was our request to BC Transit. They got a busy year. So that work is already initiated, and it was interesting. We've already started some of the data collection just last week. So you can respond to the residents that, yes, we'll definitely be looking at it. It's targeted the south end, which is 8 and 9 at this point.
All right, thank you. On to, unless anyone has any questions or comments about that, on to question period. Oh, Director Yana DiNardo.
I've just had some people inquiring if there's any added, for Cowichan Bay, we're just up and down the spine, basically, right? And so I've had some, I know that you've had the correspondence as well, is it time, or are we still looking at Cowichan Bay, just leaving it on the spine as well? So, will that be in part of South End? Or where are we considered in this? Because I never know where we are.
That's a good question. I'm going to put Aaron on the spot for this one. 8 and 9, the main thrust of our challenge is really in Mill Bay and Shawnigan Lake for the most part. But Aaron, do you know if the intent was to include Cowichan Bay as well on that review? Could you speak to that,
Oh,
please?
yeah, Cowichan Bay would be included, and the idea is that we collect ride counts to know exactly where people are going. If we find that Cowichan Bay is going to Duncan and not going to Mill Bay, then maybe it makes sense to have a Cowichan Bay circulator like we used to have that goes to Duncan and doesn't go to Mill Bay. So there's a lot of options, a lot of things to consider, but without having the data, we would just be sort of shooting in the dark, so.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, on to question period. Our one member of the public is satisfied. Excellent. So I need a motion to go into closed session, moved and seconded in accordance with Community Charter Part 4, Division 3, Section 90, and sections as noted in the agenda. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion is carried. We'll take a 5-minute break to get things sorted out. Thank you.